Hello, it's Carmen with Cherished Legacies in the Well Chronicle Life, and tonight is the last webinar for the year for Photo Rescue Roadshow. Stay tuned for plans for 26, but the theme for tonight is a special one for me, is service and sacrifice, and you're going to learn how to uncover, document, and share military legacies. And there's no better way to honor a veteran than to keep their stories alive. So we're gonna get started. If you're new to the channel, a lot of questions I get is where I store these documents, how I share it, and what I recommend for my clients and for myself. I use Forever Permanent Storage because of the guarantees, because of the safety. I don't have to worry about a monthly subscription. I don't have to worry about ordering something and not ordering it and then it goes away and all those issues. So for that reason, and then probably almost equally is the customization. The way you can layer and build a story out, the tools are like no other, and that's why I use it. Now you will get if you don't want to use this and you want to use the tips that I give in your own platform or wherever else you want to preserve, that's great. But I just wanted to get that out up front of what I use to store these things. So the why is on the left is my grandfather in World War II, and I knew very little about his story. I knew where he was stationed and his what branch he was in, and that was it. So I'm going to show how I built out his story and how meaningful that was to me. And then on the right is my husband, and so a totally different situation of because I have information about him and I have him to ask. So how I built out his story, and we'll look at both of those tonight. So we're going to start with my grandfather of uncovering a veteran story. So this is a story that you may not have a lot of information. So this is where I would start. And I would start by creating an album, some album, and then what you can do is for that person and just put what you have in it. And I had very little, I'll show you in a minute. And then I shared that with family, said, hey, I'm working on building this story. Do you have any photos you can add? Do you have any documents? Let me know. And I'm just going to show you in this how you can do this in Forever. It's quite easy. If you look up here on the right-hand side, share, and then you can see this pops up. And so you can copy a link. That's what I use the most. You can use a QR code or you can email. I use copy the link. The important part is it defaults to not having this checked. But if you check this, allow anyone in the link to upload, then anyone can upload to this. So it makes it really easy to collaborate with family to say, hey, upload anything you have about granddad's service. So that is important to do, to check that and then share that. So that's how I kind of got started, right? Okay, the next step in this process is to go in and request their service records. If they're 75 years or older from when they left, then anyone can do it. If they're less than 75, it has to be the closest living relative. And so be sure, I will put this in the resource document. Just be sure to comment below that you need it. And make sure when you go, you get this Gov account, archives.gov/veterans, okay? And because a lot of things come up that are not the archives. And so you just click here. And now I will tell you, I personally had problems. If you do it online, you have to verify me. And myself and my husband had a problem getting that to work. And usually that's not a problem for me. So we had to fax in the form asking for my grandfather's records. And so I would do that just because it takes time. So that would be the next step I would do. After that, another resource uh, is what I was going to say. You can also use that for photos. But the next resource I want to talk about is Ancestry. Now, if you've used Ancestry, and I have, I did not know this. So usually what I do is I could just go in and look at all my hints. So if you've used it, you open your tree and you get this little thing, a little leaf, and you have hints. What I discovered was from the hints is that the military records didn't come up. So I had gone through all my grandfather's hints, and there were no military records. I filled in this part, which is under search, military records, right here, and I found probably a dozen or more, I'll show you later, of his records that did not come up in hints. So that was like a huge find for me. So I encourage you, if it's not coming in and you know they were in the military, to come up and put their information in here. All I put in was his name, his last name, and his birthday, and that was it. And I had a bunch of military records come on. Another source, in depending on what level of ancestry this may come in free, is Fold3. Now that did not work for me, but I know that works for other people, so I wanted to mention it here to put it in there and search for the military records. But what I did use later on, I'll show you for research. I really like how they have laid out in publications and information. So I did use this, but I didn't find anything specifically to those people. The third resource that I use a lot, also that can be included in your, is newspaper.com. So when I discovered the years, I got all these mustard rolls and all these promotion records from his time. So I knew when he showed up and I actually got a discharge paper from those military records. So what I did is I came in here and put the date, and then I put where he was stationed, and then I came here and I put page 1, because what I wanted is to filter. I just wanted the front pages to show up. And what I wanted to do is, I didn't find his particular unit or his name in here, but I wanted to put his service in context. So what was happening when he was serving around the world? So what I did is, when I had a document, I found a newspaper article that was interesting from the same month and year of that, and put it into his account. So it put his life and his service in context. So this was a really cool thing to do. So you can do this. Look up that. So that's a great thing to do. Then I found pictures. And so I Googled his station, the year, and found this book that had pictures from World War II. And then I found another site that had the actual this I had another one that had the station he was at, and it had some photos on that website, and I just found a couple other photos from there. Okay, so I got all that thing. So let me show you what that looked like. So you can see I did Ancestry, I did Fold3, and I did the newspaper. Okay, and then I found photos. And then what I did is I put all of that information together. So let's look what happened. So this is his documents, and you can see the top here, or you can see the ones of him in uniform were the only photos I had. And then I found some planes. He was a mechanic, so I had researched and found what planes he would have worked on during that time, and found a couple pictures of that. And then I found actually of the Navy station. I found a picture of that, found a postcard, and then you can see here I found his registration card, but I also have these newspapers in here. And so, these are like mustard rolls or promotion, enlistment, report of changes. Anytime I have one of these documents, I found all of this, didn't know. Then I tried to find a newspaper to go around that time. So, what was happening during the time of, he was having these changes, or he was reporting for muster call. So I have those. So what I did was I wrote down all of his promotions and the naval station he was at in the date. I put all of that in AI. I put the one story I had about him, which was that after he got out, He really didn't trust flight. He had one flight where he flew to Florida and then he refused to fly back and he never flew again. And he loved to travel, but he would drive everywhere. He didn't want to fly after working on these planes. So I added that. I added that my mother was born. You can see this picture right here of my mother's birth during this time in the middle, and she was born in Pensacola. And I added the research I found that what kind of planes he was probably working on. And so I just put all of that information that I have, which was not a ton of information. I mean, I did find all these documents proving, his promotions, but not a lot of really information. And I asked it to tell a story. And so then into the album description, I have the story. And I have just a little pieces like I had how much my mom's her birth, how much it was at the hospital. So that's in there. The story of him not wanting to fly after that, and then his different promotions and what planes he was working on and why that was vital. And I will tell you, I've always been proud of my grandfather. But, I never thought, well, he didn't go overseas. He only served here. But it really put in perspective to me about how his service was an important piece of the war and how it was important to keep these planes in the air and how these planes were an important vital role in World War II. And so it totally changed my whole perspective about his service. And so this was just such a meaningful project for me to do this. So I highly encourage you to try these things. Here's a postcard I found of his Navy station. And this is ongoing. The other thing I will say is I usually don't like to see the dates um, in my account. I usually like to filter custom or custom edit so you don't see the dates. But I really like for this project seeing the dates. Now these I just have January 1st, 1942. I don't know the dates, so those all kind of fell to the top. But all of these documents and everything, I have the dates. And so I really like how it builds a timeline of his service. The other little hint I would tell you is for these newspapers, uh, to be sure you go in here and change the date. Usually I put in the description, I did not here, but I usually put the source document. But I do change the date to the date of the newspaper so that it will flow in timeline. And that for each of his documents here, I name the name of it. This is an enlistment document. Or a report of change. So I put the name, report of change. I copy and paste from Ancestry the important information here for my loved one, and I put the source citation, and then I change the date, right? So I upload one at a time, and it works much better to just do one at a time, and it doesn't take long to copy and paste that information. So that's the information on that. Then I will also say I'm working on the clients right now, and we don't have they have a whole like hundreds of slides of they have hundreds and hundreds of slides of from Vietnam, but they don't know a lot about his service and he's passed away. So we did is we put all the slides in account, and I contacted the veterans of Vietnam War. I contacted them and asked to find somebody within that organization that could look, and they're looking at the slides and taking notes and giving context of what they the context of what they can tell from those photos. So that's a great resource. Or if you have a VFW or any of those associations near you, is to go to one of those and ask if there's somebody who's willing to look at some photos for you and give you some context of those photos. So the next one I want to do is somebody capturing a living veteran story, and this is my husband's and what I did. So I started the same place. I started an account and just started. The honest truth is I have probably as many photos of him in service as I did for my grandfather, which is kind of sad thinking I have as many from World War II as I do from current, but that is the truth. And sometimes it's harder to get their story. So I'm going to say this is a good place to start. And these were 3 questions that he said were really good questions to start with. Don't start with, what was the worst battle? What battles were you in? All those things. Start with really simple questions. Why did you decide to serve? Why did you choose the branch you served in? And what do you miss the most about your time in the military? 3 really great conversations to get it started. The other thing I would say is with him, you never know what he's going to tell me a story, and it's just giving space for him to talk. And sometimes we're driving down the road and he'll start telling a story, and I just hit record on my phone and record that story for later. And so just sometimes it's better not to have this like set interview, but just record as these stories come to place. The next tip for a current person is to ask one of their battle buddies. So if you have some names or ask them for some, who did you serve with? Who were your favorite battle buddies? And some stories for them to start with is how did you first meet my loved one? Do you remember a funny story that still makes you smile? What was their role in your unit? Because their opinion may be different than your loved one, so it's always interesting. And how would you describe them in uniform? Those are some great questions, and I'll put those in the resource guide and some more about questions to start the story, to start to find out really about this person's service. Okay, so this is another, if you get there, and you can get the DD 214 request from how I told you before in the archives, but also they may have it, right? So my husband gave me his, and I'm going to show you what I did with that in a minute. But I'll also say I was able to find specific articles about his unit because I knew his unit in uh, in the newspaper when I sorted by where he was stationed and his unit. I found several articles to include. So let me show you some things about his. I'm going to start with this. So if you have his DD 214, it'll list all of the awards. And what you can do is you'll go to, let me find this one, military ribbons. And you just search for the ones, and then you take a screenshot of that, or snip it, right? And then under it you copy and paste why they got this award. So you can see here, this is this one, and then over here on the right you put the file name, and I haven't done that, but I need to put the Coast Guard. This one I didn't put the name. I should put Coast Guard Good Contact Medal in the title. And then what qualifies for that award. And to make it even better, if there's a story about, well, why did you get this? Then you can add that to there. That would be even better. I would actually put that on the top if you have that. So you can see his ribbons and the reason he has it. So I got a few more I gotta add back their description. And oh, this is his whole all his ribbons together, what it would look like on the uniform. The other little tool that is great is Google Maps. So all I did was, let me just do, this is for his Army service. So all I did is go to Google Maps, asked him, where he served and what year. And so you can name this whatever you want, the little pinpoints. And I put these off. Those are all of his Army, and these are all of his Coast Guard. And then what I would do is right up here, I would write Coast Guard 1992. And these are the places that he went in the Coast Guard, right? And you just put that in and if I wanted to list them in description, I could, or if I want to write more about that, I could. But that is a great resource. So let's go look at his. So this is his military life album. So you can see he has his Coast Guard. Under his Coast Guard, you can see I couldn't find anything searching for his specific ship, but he told me a story about, and I was able to go search it and find the story in the newspaper in here. And these are just paperwork and a few pictures I have of him. And you can see his map right here of all the places that they went. And then I uh, nested, nested, his awards under there, so you can see that. So that was his Coast Guard, and then his Army, and you can see the story. He's told stories about basic training, and he told stories about the 82nd Airborne, and he's told stories about different things like that. So all that's in here, plus his maps of where he went are there. And then here's his time in Iraq has a different one. So depending on, how long they served, you might have lots of nested albums. Depending on all those things, it depends on, he served for basically 4 years in the Coast Guard, 4 years in the Army. So, he doesn't have as much as some people would have, might have a album for each different place you're stationed or each different conflict. Everybody's going to look different. You can see here I was able to find articles about his unit. He was actually in a Los Angeles Times article, so that's the article right there. That is this, I think this is his DD 214. He was mentioned in this book, so I have that book uh, and and this is the author of that book. This is another article that he was in. And there's a few pictures, very few pictures of him. Most of these pictures, he's not even in here. These are pictures that people he served with that I asked for because he didn't have any pictures. So I was asking, do y'all have any pictures? And this is a picture that his mom had taken before he went um, deployed overseas, and she wanted a family picture taken, and he laminated and carried it with him in his pocket when he was serving. So there's that story. And you can see here stories about Iraq there, and there's other stories there. So I like to have an overall story in descriptions. You can see an album description. So there's the story about that. I will add a story under much. I'm going to add one under here of all of his awards. I'll have a nested album for the Army under there. So that is all I have for today. Hopefully you got some great tips from that, and I look forward to seeing you next time. So have a great day. Bye.